Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Encounters on Bigfoot Odyssey. Hope everybody's doing all right out there tonight. No Kerry tonight, but standing in, someone far more beautiful than Kerry could ever be. Is Iron Dogger. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Daniela?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Our guest tonight, Mr. Walter Paul, but we're going to call you Paul. Welcome to the show.
Please.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It's interesting in one way. I know you didn't actually see this thing, but there's such a story to go with your encounter, including your grandma, the local sheriff, the farmers up the road. I mean, it's a very interesting story. So I'm going to let you just take us through it, where you were at the time, how old you were, because I know you were young as well, and what you were doing when this all started.
Okay. All right. So this happened out in Big Sandy, Montana, and it's Big Sandy's about 40 miles south of the Canadian border, right in the middle of the state. And it happened. My grandparents have a farm about 33 miles away from Big Sandy. Like most of the ranches or farms are, pretty big by California standards, but like our ranch is like 3,200 acres, and it was all dryland wheat farming. And so during the summer, they live out at the farm, and then they go back into town for the winter because Montana's got horrible winters. But so I've never been 100% sure. I think I was 12 or 13 years old when it happened. I'll just tell you. So my grandfather and my uncles had to go into town, and so obviously it's like 32 miles away. And I was learning how to weld duck feet, the part of the thing that tills the soil, and it's called hard surfacing. So my grandpa told me, he says, "Don't you weld while I'm gone," right? And so I watched them drive away, and as soon as I seen them there's only one turn going to Big Sandy, so I saw them make the turn, and I ran in there and fired up the welder. And I was inside of a building called a Quonset. It's probably about 80 feet wide and 150 feet deep, metal building. And my grandfather used to put their winter wheat in a big pile in there, and then our equipment would go in there, would winter in there and stuff. And because there was so much wheat on the ground in there, we have lots of cats there out on the farm. Like I was thinking on this day this happened, there was at least 10 or 15 cats that were next to me. So I just fed the cats as my grandpa was leaving. And the Quonset is about 100 yards away from the main house. It's kind of down below. So I just fed the cats, so it was just crawling with cats. And then I fired up the welder and started welding. And I don't know how long I've been going, but I don't know, guys, if you weld, it's really loud, And I think I even had earmuffs on and the face shield, or the helmet. No, not earmuffs, just the helmet and stuff. But sorry, I should have shut off messages. So I was welding and I had the face shield on, and it's really loud. And then I heard this scream that came way over the welder, and I instantly stopped what I was doing. And I remember looking, because all the cats held perfectly still for a second. And the scream was still kind of going when I shut the welder off. And I was thinking, oh my God, I have never heard my grandpa be that mad, but I thought I was in so much trouble. And I was kind of, just picture like a rectangle building that has a great big roll-up door for the equipment to come in. And then there's a little side door at the corner. So I was welding right by the side door. It was shut. And then I stuck my head out of the big roll-up door, and my grandmother, the 100 yards away, she came out with a shotgun and and she was just staring at me, and then she saw it, and she says, "Get in the car." She says, "I'm going to come and get you." And she had to drive down to where it was at. Well, while that was going on, it screamed a second time. And then the second time was like, for my whole life, I have never heard, like, I've listened to all the audio you can hear about Bigfoot, and I've never heard anything that as a matter of fact, because of following Bigfoot, I can't actually remember exactly what it sounded like anymore, because you hear so much and everything.
Okay.
But I just know that I've never heard it yet, like the way it was. But I always remember the second scream went on for about 20 or 30 seconds, because it was long enough for my grandma to run out. And my grandpa had this 10 gauge shotgun that was like antique. And I remember her come running out with that, and she threw it in the car, and then she came skidding down, and I jumped in through the window, and she had the shotgun across the seat kind of pointing up out the window. And so apparently she had to drive right past it. I will say this, one of the weird things was when it screamed the second time, I kind of could see all the cats and all the animals around me. Everything froze. Nothing had moved since the first scream, but then everything just peaked, because that place smelled like cat pee forever after that.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then we tease my grandma because she drives to town so slow, and she was going like 60 and 65, and it's all 20 some miles of dirt road, She's
Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, just floating, drifting the corners, and we went right straight to the sheriff's. And in Big Sandy, there's like a grocery store, back then 3 bars, a post office.
Like out here.
Yeah. Very similar. 832 people there, or 842. It's got like the Guinness Book World Record of never changing population. It's really odd. But anyway, so we went right into this, his name was Paul. He was the sheriff. And when we pulled up in, our neighbors that were like 7 miles away, they were on the phone with the sheriff, talking to the sheriff, saying that they said this big SOB took one of their calves, a yearling calf. And that's like, at that time of the year, that would put it 600 to 800 pounds, And so nobody wanted to say it was big and hairy, but they said it, took off with a cow. And then where we're at, like the song, our national anthem, right? Amber Waves of Grain. I was literally out where it's just wheat. It seems like flat forever.
Okay.
And about 35 miles away is the base of the Bear Paw Mountains, and it's the Blackfoot Reservation. And so this thing was making a beeline to the Blackfoot Reservation, but it ended up crossing through like 7 different families or people saw it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this was, I'm 54. So I never really did the math. It was in the 70s when it happened. But these are all like half the town's Swedes and the other half is Norwegian. And they're like all make fun of each other. It's all they do. And these are like all World War II vets that, like, one thing about these people is nobody exaggerates. Everything's completely underplayed. And so all these people were calling in about it. And then my daughter was going to San Jose State, for English or literature major. And she said she might have access to this Nexus thing where I could search all the articles, because it was I don't know if it was in the Great Falls paper or Big Sandy's local paper, but I wanted to try and find it, because it happened on a Friday and it was in the Sunday paper.
That is really interesting. There should be archives of it, even in your local library should have,
Yeah. And I live out in Santa Cruz. I went back to Big Sandy. So I live in California. Okay. But I would go back to Montana from when school got out to 2 days before school started. I worked on that farm from since I was 9 to 21, somewhere in that area. But yeah, so that's like something I actually want to kind of chase that down a little bit just to see.
Yeah, to catch up on the backstory and and really relive that moment too. Because most people, if they say like a bear has got their cattle, they'll say it dragged it off. Like
Yeah,
there's
I
more
carried it.
specific verbiage used in those cases. They're not going to say it carried it off.
Yeah, no, they said it over the shoulder, walked away.
So what did your grandmother see then? You said she saw it.
So here's the thing. Yeah, she never would say. She never would say. And
Really?
and then literally, you guys, literally. So this was in the 70s. So the Patty film had been out, and you know, so it was part of American culture back then. It was something that was in the papers.
Yeah.
And we literally got made fun of just nonstop on it. So nobody talked about it.
And what about past history? Had you grandparents never ever mentioned it, or
nothing odd, nothing like that, you know? And I literally, since I was 9 years old, had complete run of like where I could go 50 miles in any direction across anybody's, like I was everywhere. If there was, so one thing when you're out there in those fields, it all looks flat, but there's river bottom everywhere. It's all dry river bottom stuff.
Okay.
But anywhere I could go jump a motorcycle, 4-wheel drive. I just screwed around continually when I was there. And weirdly, you know, it never made me freak out about going down there at night. It was like honestly, that little thing happened, and then never thought about it afterwards for a lot of years.
I had the same response. Okay.
Yeah, like, and then you know,
so it didn't change your experiences of going outside. Like you weren't afraid to go out anymore or anything.
In my nature,
it was because you didn't see it. Do you think that may have had a role in it?
I think that's probably really true. I mean, because to be honest, what my whole drive has been ever since is to put a face to what I heard. You know, I was telling Daniela earlier that, you know, I found Robert Dotson's page. I know he passed away, but he had like videotaped some stuff that I'm like, when I saw it, I'm like, ooh, man.
Ooh, right.
Yeah, it's like one of the most you know, so part of me has always wanted validation, and then now I don't really care as much. And it was kind of interesting. I've been going to the same church for, oh Lord knows, 26 years or something. And today I was nervous today about talking about this. So I was telling some different friends and stuff, and they're like, "What?" You know, nobody really knew. But what was even interesting was, literally 50% of the people I spoke to today, friends or family had an encounter. Other 50% are like, all right, dude, I knew there was something weird about you. But you know, it's just interesting. So I like, dude, I'm in my wife's candle making room because I would just get harangued having this conversation in the oven. but when Carrie called me, I'm like, I ran out here to the room, you know, like she's all, what was that? You know, and I'm like, Bigfoot, leave me alone.
It's not an easy thing to talk about. And I mean, it must be easier, maybe slightly for you guys over there. But for me in England, like if I meet someone or someone new and they go, what you into? And I go, Bigfoot, like just
oh, yeah, I bet.
Really?
It's really like, you know, awkward trying to describe it in like a couple of minutes. It's like, no, you need an hour. You need to come and listen, come and sit down and let me explain all this, because it's so difficult to explain without having anything to show in a way,
right,
other than people's accounts. And, you know, so I understand completely how, you know, for those who don't believe or haven't got a clue about it, you're just going to get a blank stare and like, yeah, what?
right. Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, it's been so like, and I want to say in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, but particularly, you know, I wanted to say that I've seen like the direction shift. And I want to say I went through like maybe 15 years ago when some people were touching on the topic that Gigantopithecus or like an undiscovered ape, you know, and then as you start going into this rabbit hole, you're like, well, wait a minute. How is it that they can, you know, if it's just an animal, how is it can avoid everybody, you know? And then, you know, and then I used to think like, oh, it disappeared. It did this, it did that. Like, you know what? Nobody really knows. I kind of have a feeling it's better not to know in some sense, because I think like if there was full-blown disclosure, I think it would change everything in a, maybe not in a good way. I don't know, like even just for going out with your family hiking and stuff like that.
Right.
If something like that came up, that there's a a group of people or whatever they are, you know.
What about spreading awareness? I mean, do you have hunters you go out with? Do you have guys you go out with hunting and talk about it with them?
You know, honestly, no. You know, like I'm a bow hunter, and when I was in Colorado, my I want to say sister-in-law, so my cousin's wife, she's a believer, and I will say this, that when we were up, I took my family up backpacking up on this mesa. It's kind of like parts of Colorado is just a high desert up there, and I got to tell you that when people talk about the hair standing up, I didn't know. I thought it was a mountain lion, but we were looking for arrowheads, and dude, the creepiest sensation, you know, up there. So I know, like, and I do that same thing where you just push it off. Like it's just probably a cat, you know. My daughters were littler back then, so it was massive papa bear about anything that could eat them, you know. So, but yeah. It was. But most people, it stays out of the normal, you know, for like in my conversations. But I feel like in the last 2 or 3 years, awareness is complete. And I think the Steve Isidal guy, he had said something about like, screw trying to prove it.
Right.
Just acknowledge, you know, just we know something exists. So let's be aware about it, even amongst ourselves, you know, like, and I thought that is such a wise, because it's leapfrogging all the naysayers. Because I was telling Daniela that I was looking at Thinker Thunker has a website, and he did this thing with Patty's foot, that mid-tarsal break, where you actually can see that foot flopping up 45 degrees in the front on every step she takes. I'm like, dude, like when he released that, I'm like, why is I'm a nerd. I'm like, why is that not on the cover of every page, you know, that proves it? But
it's intriguing how many people that aren't into the topic, and when you start talking about it to them or bringing them into it, they have no idea as how much actual evidence is out there. You know, like they are usually shocked is what I've come across, is most people aren't aware just how much is really out there. And the more that you know, enlighten people, the more they realize, like, this is, you know, like has been said, you could prove it in court, you know, you just can't prove it in science at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like, and once you accept it, then you can actually see the validity in the foot thing or whatever, in thermal imaging. There
has been a lot of actual, you know, intense scientific scrutiny of the Patterson-Gimlin film, even recently, and they are even using AI to really break down those pixels and pull it apart. And what's been interesting, and I was telling Carrie about that, is that they are finding, like, where it looks like it's hairline, that really isn't. It's more like because the mouth was in motion. And so they're finding out a lot of different things, because, you know, now with technology and, you know, the way that the muscles and the neck muscles move when the jaw is flexing and moving. And so they're able to start picking out these, you know, finer details. And when you consider what was available back then, you know, there's no way, they still can't recreate that.
No. And then the fact that it was shot on 16 millimeter film.
Correct.
With the particular lens that they were using, the resolution is like 2.7K. So when they were showing it in theaters, they bring it down to 480p, which is just, you know, horrible. So that's why it's so bad. and they're actually able to clean it up more and more and more, you know. It's I've been, you know, watched the whole thing. I was saying that the evidence, like I get tired of the undiscovered ape side of it, because that makes no sense to me personally. Like, how can it fits more into a people than a monkey, shall we say? I mean, aesthetically, it looks like a gorilla.
But considering all of our genealogy, you know, on both sides of the spectrum, you know, we have, you know, they're just, until we actually have some DNA, real, true, you know, like, I know there's a lot of people claiming they have DNA and they're putting out the studies, but, you know, when we have something really substantial, you know, and I'm not one of those that say we need a body or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, I used to.
It is better that the community itself, like you said, does leapfrog trying to prove it to the skeptics, because, you know, when you've seen it, like I've seen it, you don't, like, you know, how are you going to prove? Like, that's like trying to prove someone what size fish you caught when you have no evidence, you know.
It's
just your point. Word.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, we will need a body, though, won't we?
Right.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
How else physically are we going to prove it? I'm not saying anyone go out there and kill one. I'm just saying, you know, to know what this thing is.
Exactly.
And even then, at that point, we're not even going to be able to study its behavior.
Correct.
You know, that's another level then of working out what this thing is. To try and capture one and keep one, I don't think would be possible. That's not how you study a creature, and we can't even do that yet. Find out how it stalks something, or how it kills something, or you know,
or where it spends most of its time.
Yeah, stuff like that. We just don't. Would love to know, but it's behavior. I really want to know about.
And then you think about like how, like, I don't know, and everybody, I think we all go through like different like putting our puzzle together with information, right? And like 3 years ago, my youngest daughter, this poor little girl, gets captured with me in my vehicle, and so she has to listen to me theorize on what, you know, and so my theories changed like a bunch of times, but I think that one thought I have lately is that, you know, it's kind of a weird thing, because Bigfoot gets hit by a car, people see it eating, and, you know, if it's this ultimate apex predator and it's divine and it does all these things, why is it eating out of a garbage can? I mean, answer that question for me. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you know, so I've gone round and round and round on this. Kind of where my heart's sitting on it now is that I think if there was a body did show up, I don't think that it would ever see the light of day, because it would change things to foundationally. It would change, like, if it is like leaning towards some type of old people, something, it's like a relic type of human type thing, something like that, something that has language, has intelligence, and obviously stays away from us, you know. One of the things I've noticed is, if, you know, like 15 years of digesting encounters, is it strikes me as that Bigfoot has a set of rules somewhat, that like, why are they so interested in children? You know, like, why is it they don't break windows in houses? You know, like there's a lot of things, like they don't come in our house. They don't, you don't hear about that. And I would say that it's so rare when you do. I would go with law of averages on that and kind of set that off to the side a little bit till I hear 100 people say, oh yeah, it was in my fridge, you know, or something like that. But it seems like, so my kind of what I'm saying is that if it is something with language, then what's that mean? You know, like, can you go to if it calls the forest its home, you know, everything's going to get protected, and it would change. I think it would change the foundation of, part of me thinks that maybe it's in no government's interest to acknowledge it, that it would be, I think China does, I know the state of Washington kind of says it's illegal if you come in contact with one to kill it. What other state has a bounty out on it?
I can't remember.
Ohio?
Which one recently. Was
it
it?
Yeah.
Oklahoma? Was it not in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. Yeah. Like $3 million bonus on it. But yeah.
Just going back to what you said, you know, it's all about perception, isn't it? And we put a lot on it based on our experiences and other people's experiences, and we're trying to connect the dots. But sometimes I think we can make things really complicated, and sometimes you have to strip things back and go back to basics because we don't have a lot of facts. So everything else we talk about is what we perceive is. So, for example, you know, why they're interested in children, but they're fascinated with people though as well. You know, they come up on people's properties. They know women have been stared at. Oh, we've heard encounters of that. I think they're fascinated with anybody, maybe, and maybe not just children. But obviously, when you mention children, kind of like, you know, you get more worried, don't you? Obviously, because they're small and you want to protect them. So you feel then that this is something that preys on children, maybe. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there that we have this perception of this thing. And, you know, bears, I've seen so many YouTube videos of bears stuck in dumpsters. What are they doing in dumpsters? If they can smell food, they'll come and take it. So I think, you know, maybe these are just another creature that are just too clever for us to capture. Maybe it's not all the big mystery. And, you know, who knows? I don't know.
It'd be a letdown if it is.
It will be, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm not going to say critter, Jamie, but but you know, we really don't know, do we?
Right.
And I think we do try and put these, you know, traits on them, and we could be totally off. I don't know. It's all fascinating. But what I do find fascinating, sorry, I'll stop talking in a minute. When you say, why don't they break windows? I've been thinking about that recently, of how their spatial awareness, they never break a wing mirror. They never snap an aerial. You know, I just knock something, you know, walk past something, I can knock something off the counter really easily. These never seem to cause any damage when they're around people's properties and vehicles. Never knock a bucket over. They seem very, very careful for something so big.
Right. And if it was something that was very threatening, you would think you would have more of these, you know, like the cabin here. We've got these giant big windows, and it is a nature reserve out past the lake, you know, and like if there was, you know, an aggressive predatory, you know, whether you want to call it a tribe or a creature, regardless, if it was predatory, you know, you would think you would have a lot of those. So there is something very intriguing about their habits.
I end up feeling like my working thing now is that they have a set of rules. I don't know who made them, what they are, but I feel like if you think about it, there's more you hear more about them actually helping somebody than hurting somebody. You know, like if you like, and unfortunately I've probably digested the internet on encounters, you know, and for me, it's always been about trying to put a face to what I heard. I just want that thing. And then I also want to tell my wife, you know, like, or better yet, I'm like, well, I hope she gets to see one, you know, but who knows?
Your grandmother, in any conversations later on, like just hanging out, did your grandmother ever bring it up, ever?
No, we were ridiculed on that for a couple summers after that. But you know what? I'm actually going to contact my uncle. And I'm going to talk to him about it. I haven't spoke to him in years, but I was going to talk to him and just see if Grandma didn't mention anything about it. I know in my whole entire life, she's never, ever grabbed a gun, and she had to go to the closet to get it. And just the fact that she did all that so fast and you know, said something, and she had to literally drive down to where it was. And she pulled up in front so I could jump straight out of the building into the vehicle. And then we went around. She told me to stay down, and we went flying out, and I popped up, but I never got to see anything. And it's super irritating. But Daniela asked me, like, is that may be a good thing, you know, because I have, my nature is to poke the bear, you know, as not to run from the bear, but to poke the bear. So I don't know if it would have been super derogatory. I mean, I've literally never had a nightmare about it, you know, anything else like that. Just absolute curiosity. You know, I've encountered other things as an adult, you know, like somebody possessed, you know, or whatever, and you're just like, yeah, it's scary stuff. And it's just really like, and it's really interesting because some things are acceptable in the odd to talk about, but like I said today, 50% of the people I talked to at church who never knew this about me were like giving me relatives encounters, you know, and then the other 50%, like I said, they're like, huh, I knew he was a little weird, you know, like, you know, so can't win, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting as the more that we have the topic and more people actually start sharing their observations and their experiences, you know, it does become more commonly acknowledged and acceptable, you know, and, you know, even though there's shows out there, you know, that are really over the top, you know, even some, you know, channels and stuff, you know, either way, the topic is becoming, it seems more acceptable in, you know, in public spaces, which is a good thing.
Well, like I found out that like half of the kids at the church I go to, they're the little kids, they're all like, oh, Bigfoot, yay, you know, like, so I know that it's brought that more out into like just daily talking. But yeah, it is interesting. Shucks, forgot what I was going to say.
Well, like our whole state fair, like the poster behind me here, our whole state fair was Bigfoot, and it was seeing is believing. And Carrie had made a remark about no, seeing is knowing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I mean, you know, like the state made a huge acknowledgement of it. You know,
Alaska did.
Yeah, like that's their Alaska State Fair poster.
It was okay. Jeez.
Yeah,
you know,
just this year.
Yeah, I'm so curious, I hope, like, and I don't know about you, but there's been so many things. Like there was just this thing that came from TikTok about this tree getting ripped out, and I'm like, yeah, it's real, you know. And then you find out the video's been trimmed. You know, I'm like, ugh. I have been like, oh, it's finally ready, like 5 times, like it's all ready. And then you find out that it's a knucklehead getting attention.
Right. Like my husband and my son are, you know, our family all together are avid outdoorsmen, and we love getting out. And we have talked so many times, like this summer we had some extra projects take over, but we were planning on going out to like Portlock, you know, and actually spending some time, like a month out there, you know. And we have, you know, some places in Oregon where we want to go out and, you know, set up a camp and have them hike way out and, you know, spend some time out there and really trying to get that in the woods, like hardcore time spent, you know, like the national, you know, all of those National Geographic, all of those places that get these phenomenal video. That's what they do, is they spend that time out there, but it takes months in a lot of cases. Like look at the snow leopard, for example, how long it's taken for us to get video of a snow leopard. We've known they've existed, you know, but trying to get video, it's just been real recent. So, you know, it's going to take some work, but I'm really hopeful that it's going to happen. You know, the more technology we get, you know, it seems like something's about to break. It really feels like, as far as the information goes and the way it's being dispersed, it feels like there's
so I absolutely agree with that. You remind me of what I wanted to say is, so I, just as far as disclosure goes, I noticed that when they were talking about the UFO stuff, and if you're and I kind of like language, you know, just the way people speak, intonation, all that stuff. but I noticed specifically that the U.S. government started talking about interdimensional beings, and I'm just like, whoa, that's really strategic that they're saying that,
Right.
because as all this stuff is coming to the forefront, everything's kind of coming to the forefront,
Right.
and are they related? I truly don't know. I think there's some stuff biblically that makes sense, like that, and not the Nephilim side of it, but even that's whatever. Like Scott Carpenter, I really like him, but I've been trying to wrap my brain around that for years. But I did catch that they started using the term interdimensional, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because that's kind of explains using that term. Then you have an open door for darn near anything that's odd that people see.
That's right. And especially with all the quantum physics and what we are discovering in, that little micro world, and it is completely different dynamic of physics altogether, and we are learning so much. And now that we have quantum computing, like just being able to get down to certain computations, now we can do that, as before we weren't able to do a lot of the computations necessary for certain things, and now they're being done in split seconds, and so I really am excited about where all of this is taking us.
Yeah, I for me, like, I have this hesitancy about full disclosure. Like, I feel like something weird around it. I don't know what it is, but I get this like check of, something's up. And if you think about it, in our lifetime, how things have changed, we're talking to you guys right now about this, but that's so different than 15 or 20 years ago. And then how much technology is just jump. And I actually feel like, for, they make fun of conspiracy theories or whatever, like all this stuff, but you come to find out a lot of stuff's is what it seems to be, and so I on this particular Bigfoot, for me, like, there's just this part of me that just wants that, selfish justification to go to everybody, but I also recognize too that I'm starting to realize that what I want may not be the answer, that
I think it's a long way off. It's a long way off, isn't it? Saying to people, "Told you so."
Yeah, it is. It is.
Long way off. Everybody will, no matter what you do, there will be someone pulling it apart, or you've got to be really bang on now with evidence before anyone will take you seriously. And then who are we trying to prove to? This is
exactly thing. Yeah, a naysayer. Yeah.
If you want to do your thing, who's anyone else? You don't have to prove it to anyone. You're not going to be able to prove it to anyone. I think what's important is you doing it for yourself, in a way that it's important to you. It's your journey. Trying to share this with someone who hasn't got a clue, or is not interested, or doesn't believe, you're just wasting your time. And I think, it becomes a personal journey, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's personal. And
Yeah.
A lot of people exposing themselves to other people's opinions, when a lot of them don't matter.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah.
So I think focus on what you want to do.
That's
right. That's the main thing. I think it's just going to be so hard, like you say, or what I say is to say, look, I told you so. Here's the evidence. Maybe one day that will come, but I'm sure there's lots you can do in the meantime to follow your path with it, and get so much more from it than relying on other people's opinions and what they think. And it's all very, everyone's entitled to one, but you really have to, like I say, strip everything down back to basics. And go from there, because we actually, what we know is based on what everybody has told us. That's it.
Perspective. That's
right. There is a bit of evidence, the prints and stuff, but apart from that, we're going off stories and history and accounts, and
and you know that there's people that when you eat, and even online, when you hear things, there's credibility in there. The goat rescue guy. Who is that?
Donnie Miller.
Oh, Donnie.
Dude, my heart broke for that guy. Like, and there's not a false bone in that man's body. Yeah, I've never met him, but I know for a fact that happened. Carrie's story is Carrie's story, and there's nothing. And like through all the years, I've kind of realized that people, is their experience is kind of where. I've put all my pieces together, with information and stuff. And then, but yeah, that the story, it does come back to a story, doesn't it? It's, because there's literally people who it's sunny outside right here. And you'll encounter the person that says, no, it's not. No. And you're just like, dude, so why waste your time on it?
Yeah. Is it your job to prove something to someone? Like, why do we feel that it's anybody's job to prove it to a skeptic? Like, that should be upon their own self. If they don't believe it, then, what are they doing here? They need to do their own work, kind of thing. If they're going to be ridiculing people, how is that helping anything? We're really, it's not. And,
No.
if they really were curious, they would spend that time investigating it, and I think there's a lot of people out there that just want to be ugly to be ugly. And you can kind of just, almost see that and kind of just, shove them to the side and keep going forward. But like Daniela said, it becomes a personal journey, 100%.
And ultimately, I mean, you're trying to prove to yourself first. I know you've seen one.
Right.
But you're looking into it for your own thing.
Yeah.
So, why let someone else's opinions change what you do or change what you think?
Right. Or darken your doorstep, Yeah.
I think a lot of this is gut feeling, isn't it? Once you've seen one, I don't know. I'm just feeling it from people that I think once you've seen one, you must have a much better idea of what you're talking about or what you're seeing. And that is what, a lot of people don't have that benefit. It's so easy to sit there and, think you can have a guess at what these things are. I mean, I just don't bother.
It's all just speculation.
I just could make a show and talk forever about what I think, but it's absolutely pointless because I have no idea. And I can't even, I don't even want to pretend to make something up. It just fascinates me,
So at this point, I've went so many directions with it. When it does happen, I can be like, oh, I was totally right once, like 13 years ago when I was thinking that. But yeah, it's crazy. It's really circular. And then but it is interesting because it's more and more socially acceptable. I think it like for me today, I had no idea at church that there was so many people that were actually interested in the topic. But yeah, and even in Santa Cruz, we have a Bigfoot museum here in Felton. I've never been there, but I drove by it a million times, but the dude's never open when I'm there. But weird seasons, but I think more and more, I think something's going to happen, and because it kind of feels like we're moving somewhere. I don't know where, but
yeah, that's really interesting. And just to kind of circle back on originally, like your incident and your experience, that you said that you've combed all the audio files trying to find, is there anything even remotely similar that you've come across?
Do you know what though? I think because it's a feeling, like because I felt everything.
Right. Yeah.
It was so, and it was at such a different level than what somebody could reproduce. Like it was really, so like I've listened over and over and over, and these were just two. And I want to say this, that my memory is actually muddled on how it sounded. I think it was really bassy into this just horrible scream at the end, but it had it had the bass that you could feel, but then there was just this at the end where you're just like, holy crap. I thought that was my grandpa. And dude, did not want grandpa. I've seen him angry, but never like at that level. But
and then
yeah.
you mentioned all the animals urinated.
Yeah. That's everything bristled, like every hair bristled, like they looked like little poof balls. But we all just froze. And then like forever it stunk down there after that. But
right, yeah.
But it was strange, you know, and yeah, and it also seems like they would have heard it miles away. Like it's so flat out there, and nobody heard it. I mean, my grandma, obviously, she was in the back by a swimming pool, and she heard the first one, and she said she just ran in and was checking on me. So yeah.
Like the air here, when it's crisp, sound carries so far, you know.
In Montana, it's so dry. Same thing too. You can hear your neighbor like 3 or 4 miles away if he's dragging a disc behind his tractor, you know.
Yeah, that would be really intriguing to go back and look at the reports from that, like you said you want to do, and just, you know, see what was actually, you know, reported at that time, whether it was just audio, if there was more visual, you know.
Well, I remember in the paper that there was a bunch of visual. People saw it because it went just in this straight line towards the mountains, just across like these seven properties, and
straight for the reservation, correct?
Yeah. It's like the only mountain range.
What's really intriguing is on almost all of the native cultures, they all share the teaching of the 7 sacred grandfathers. And in those lessons, one of the lessons being honesty is Sasquatch and Sabe, you know, like that's what they are referenced usually is as Sabe. And I find that really interesting. And one of the videos that I was watching, they were explaining like how to communicate with these 7 grandfathers, you know, and each of the grandfathers are a different animal, you know, and like the bear and the beaver, and they all have their different lessons, you know, and in those, you know, like for the Sabe or the Sasquatch, it was, you know, really working with the cottonwood tree, which is something the Hopis, you know, are traditionally only carve with cottonwood root. And, you know, so there's a lot of interesting things. And, you know, in that they said to carve a flute from a cottonwood tree, you know, sit beneath the tree and at a D note, you know, and being of, you know, having that honest heart, you will be able to have this communication. And I'm so intrigued by that. I am really, really intrigued by that.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but I mean, I know that was it Leif Erikson, the Norwegian, like I think it was when he sailed into the Western United States.
Oh, not the child star.
But he not the child star, but he even wrote about it, you know. Who was it?
I was made for dancing.
Oh no, no, the Viking explorer.
Yeah, I got you now.
But I know that he made reference to big hairy people. You know, in every culture, in every space, they're in there pre-industrialization that they're mentioned everywhere. And
we had a president mention them.
Yeah. I you know, I use all this in my argument. like I mean, come on, dude. Like, not everybody's going to make something up. And how is it like Bauman? How he could write what he wrote back then with such specific things that is still being mentioned today by people who have visual encounters. You know, that the guy was saying stuff that nobody had said. And if you think about like how even people's so you think 5 or 6 years ago when somebody shared they talked about a stench. Now, I always disagreed with the super foul. Like I was like, I kind of took leave, or like, no, I don't really buy that, because it, you know, things can stink, you know, but you can't stink all the time, or life would be pretty tough on you. But you see like how encounters from 10 years ago, it always talked about the smell, you know, like, oh, this horrible stench, then I saw it or whatever. And then today, like, I don't know, I just see it like shifting, like man, I'm not giving you a good example.
But like the scent, like people aren't recognizing it stinking so much. Is that what?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. People don't, because people ask, like, when they're interviewing, I'm like, well, did you smell it? You know, and they're like, no, not at all. You know, like a lot of people like didn't smell Sasquatch before they saw it, you know, or
that's
seen it.
Interesting. Yeah, like a lot of people will smell a bear before you see it. Yeah.
And then so, you know, like I said, I've been following this for a lot of years. I feel like I do CSI, you know, with my earbuds, like, he's telling the truth, or not finding it. You know, so I've wrestled through all this stuff, but you just come to, like, you take in enough and you realize that there's so much similarity from different places. And I know for a fact that people don't have enough time to make, you know, this grand tale out of nothing, you know, and for what? To be ridiculed? Come on, give me a break.
Right. Yeah. How many people are going to go in to do all this research to figure out what all these little specific details are to make them exact as everyone else is, and then go through all that for what? You know?
It's the
for
wrong
what?
attention as well, isn't it? It's the wrong kind of attention.
Correct.
Yeah, you were saying that earlier.
That's people, and I think I said as well that, you know, those people have to live with themselves coming on a show or wherever and telling a lie. I mean, you know, it's not on us.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's more about them.
Us. Whatever you want to say, vetting people, it's impossible to vet somebody or someone's encounter, especially when you don't even live in the same state as them. I mean, I can't say I'm in England, but even if you lived from one, you know, end of the country to the other, it's impossible to vet. You have to take people on the word. You don't have to, but we can listen to them.
That's right.
You listen to them, and that's it. And it's up to them if they want to tell porcupines, if they needed a bit of attention. I don't know. It's not on us, you know, to feel like we've done something wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
That's going to be them to live with that. And
true, Daniela.
Yeah, that's kind of my.
What would we be guilty of? Listening to somebody and taking them at their word, you know? So it's a better thing to be guilty of that than what they do
at the moment. So I think we'll carry on and do that. You know, it's not a law yet, is it? To listen to liars.
And then just think of this: how many people's lives have been changed? Like I've never spoke to Kerry. I spoke to him a couple days ago, and to find out that, well, his encounter had enough of an effect on him that this show's happening now, you know, and there's so many other people that were just drawn to do this because of an experience, and you're just trying to I don't know, like, well, there's a validation in just finding somebody else that had an encounter, or
that's right,
or, you know, like there's a lot of you know, support.
You just want to connect and not feel so alone out there. Like, you know, I can't be the only one that had this experience, right?
Yeah,
you know?
I think it's in our nature to want our words to be, you know, to be that Paul Robertson's a man of his word, you know, or whatever, that to be known that he's not one to you know, flip a tall tale or whatever.
Exactly.
Just, you know. So when you have a tall tale, you want somebody to actually listen to you instead of like shoo you off instantly. I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Especially it happens to kids a lot, you know, like kids get and it happened to me when I was little. They're like, yeah, whatever, you know. And then, you know,
they're easy to dismiss, kids, and that's kind of a shame, you know. Like, we shouldn't be so dismissive all the time of people's experiences, encounters, and perspectives. you know, because they come from a different mindset, a different journey altogether, you know, and even though two people are looking at the same thing, their perspective is going to be different, even on a piece of art, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Definitely.
No,
it's still valid.
I just think that, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying each perspective is valid, you know, regardless, you know, like who's going to be more true or right or correct, you know?
And I know that mine's been shaped through the last five years, shaped like through this process of mostly by listening to other people. And then you have people follow their thought process out and you're like, okay, that, you know, like I grab onto different things that people say that, okay, that makes sense. And just see how it fits, you know, and because I just want to know in the end. I do want to know. I mean, I don't need it to be, I don't need the government I don't need the government to validate, you know, what I have or haven't seen, but I want to know, you know.
Yeah, all of my experiences, there were other people involved. So, you know, like yours, you had your grandmother involved. So that always adds a different flavor, I think, to certain people. Like when you experience it, like Carrie, when you're by yourself, you know, it's like all the weight is on you, you know, like, you know, where when you have multiple people that see it, like in your instance, that spreads that believability and that weight, you know, it's almost like a snowshoe effect on the snow, you know, it kind of like it, you know, it makes it a lot more plausible and it lends credence to, you know, listen to this, you know, not all these people could have been imagining the same thing at the same time. Like not everybody's drunk or high or whatever they're going to assume, you know, and, you know, even if, like that was one thing that always drove me crazy is when they question whether people are drunk or high or whatever substance.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, well,
drunk every weekend.
Right.
Everybody sees Bigfoot or whiskey.
Right. Like everybody in every bar would have their resident, you know, UFO and Sasquatch and who knows what, gremlin, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's just, you know,
it's some really bad whiskey.
It's like a cop out, you know, of skeptics that they just want to cop out and just, you know.
Yeah, just dismiss it. And it's too easy to do, isn't it? It's too easy for them to do that. It's not, like you say, not even worth putting the energy into it. But I hope tonight that you felt like you've been in a place where you can just talk about it like it's normal, because it is normal. So everybody who's in here, this is normal. You know, this creature out there, what people are experiencing, it is normal here, and there is support here. There's, you know, massive support in the chat, and you know, I hope you felt that tonight, Paul. That you've got somewhere to come and talk to, and no one's going to laugh at you here. We're all invested.
Yeah, especially as you collect more of your, you know, evidence and stuff. That's really intriguing.
Yeah. Well, thanks, you guys. I absolutely, that was a lot more pleasant than I didn't know. I thought I was going to implode on you. So
no, you did great. You did great. I do, you know, like I say, appreciate you coming on, and you and Doggo have been great tonight. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. Yeah,
good.
Thank you, Daniela.
Oh, you're welcome. So we've come to the end of the hour. We will be back in the week, Drawing Bigfoot on Tuesday. It's going to be a good one. Michael Blula is coming on. He stared at this thing for a long time, so he's got a great description for this Bigfoot. And later tonight, I'm not sure when it is, in a couple of hours, I think, Hairy Man Hoaxes, Hoodwinks channel. I'm not sure if I've got that the right way. Has got a show on tonight. Sorry, I missed the time of it. But it's Rick Dyer, a hoaxer apparently in the Bigfoot community. I don't know. You'll have to go and check it out and make of it what you will. Daniela, do you have Bigfoot in your? I don't.
In your fill in the blank, Daniela.
As far as I'm aware, I don't. And if I do, I will definitely let you know. All right, guys. Thanks again to everyone, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.